Hey guys, this is Eric Beck and welcome to the Founders Fire podcast. Today we're going to be talking about meritocracy. Is it good or is it bad? And really trying to overturn some ideas that might be holding a lot of us back in small business. So I'm going to start off with giving you some statistics I think that'll really help you get perspective on how important small business is in America and the importance of entrepreneurship. So a lot of you out there fighting the good fight already know this. I guess you could say this is piggybacking off of my new book, which is coming out, which is called A Game Worth Playing, Reinventing Our Relationship to Work. I guess I could almost say it's like, how to get out of wage slavery or how to rewrite the social contract or the workforce contract that we have seen, in the 1950s and previously. In fact, let me start off with some of these stats that are, I think, really helpful for framing things. I'm going to start with this one from 1980. How many of you guys can guess what the federal minimum wage was in 1980? Anybody got a guess on that one? If you said $5 an hour, you'd be wrong. It's $3.10 an hour. That was the federal minimum wage, equating to about $403 a month. Okay. What do you think the average rent was in 1980? Anybody got a guess on that one? $243. So pat yourself on the back if you got that. Okay, Eric, why are you telling us this? Because rent as a percentage of income, of pay, 60%. So you had about 40% of your take-home pay left over to pay the bills, pay for food, all that good stuff. Okay, that contract that we had happening in 1980 basically said that if you work a job, any job, okay, even a minimum wage job, you can survive and you can grow. The future will be better than the past. You have enough to set aside to do something you really want to do. Maybe save, maybe invest, maybe whatever, okay? Think about the mental, the mental health of that. Okay. And then now I want you to juxtapose that to the 2024 federal minimum wage, which, if anyone knows that, you're smarter than me, is actually $7.27 an hour. Okay. That's about $942 a month. What do you think the average rent is today? In 1980, it was $243. What do you think it is today? It's $1,534. So rent as a percentage of pay is 162%, meaning it's going to take everything you make plus 62% more. What is that? What does that do to us mentally and emotionally? That current contract is wage slavery. And it says if you work a job, good luck, you'll need another job. And you probably will never get ahead. You wonder why people are so negative, why they're so despondent, why suicide rates are through the roof. Mental health is the lowest it's been in a long time. All this medications and overdoses and all the things that we hear about over and over. Okay. And they're frankly pretty depressing. Why is that happening? We have a lot of theories out there. Some people just choose to ignore it. If I can ignore it, maybe I don't have to feel it, kind of the putting your head in the sand type approach. But the reality is that we have to pull our head out of the proverbial sand and we have to look things square in the face and we have to get honest and say, if we've taken away the incentive and the possibility of a better future for most people, what do you think they're going to do? Just get another side hustle, get another job, just try and invent the latest TikTok video to get some ad revenue? No, yes, but it's not going to work. And it's not working. It really matters that we start to think about restoring the dignity of work. And we can't do that alone. We definitely have to look at some things that are getting in the way. And today, really, I'm trying to make the case for small business. It's really what my book is about, is trying to create a moral case for restoring and improving, because not everything was right in 1980 for sure, but improving this idea that's going to drive us to the creation of value, but also to the dignity of what we think of in relation to work. So let's tackle this idea to start off with meritocracy. What would it basically say? Well, the meritocracy idea basically says you get what you deserve. If you do 10 push-ups, then on the whiteboard, your coach writes down 10 push-ups. And if you did 30 push-ups, the coach writes 30. You get what you deserve. And it doesn't seem fair for the guy who did 30 push-ups to lose 10 of those, and those push-ups are given to someone else, and they're getting credit for something they didn't do. Obviously, all of us would say this is just basic fairness. But is it really? I was listening to a podcast recently with Stephen West, was going through these ideas, and I thought, man, I want to put this into a small business context because it's so important. If we're going to get ahead, we have to have a way forward. And there has to be, number one, a fair and level playing ground. And we already know that that's not the truth. Okay, what are we facing that's unfair, you say? Well, first of all, inflation. Did you know that inflation affects different size businesses differently? Think about this. If you run a business that's more in the direction of a monopoly, okay, by definition, that's big business. Think Fortune 1000 or Fortune 5000. Okay, there are 33 million small businesses in America. Did you know 99% of all small businesses, of all businesses are small businesses? So only 0.01% or 0.1% are past the 500 employee mark. That's not a lot of businesses. But if you are in one of those big businesses, you have an advantage, one of many. And one is that inflation doesn't affect you the same way. So when we print more money, when we borrow more money, when we put more money into supply, we reduce its value. We all understand how inflation works. But what does that do differently at the small business level? Well, let me explain it to you. The first thing that it does is it says, well, if prices of everything are going up, this is small business logic. The small business owner thinks, well, maybe my customers won't be able to afford what I offer them anymore. So the last thing I can do is raise prices. Okay? What does a big company do with inflation? Oh, it's planned. It's planned from years ago, right? We know what we're going to do. As the money supply is further and further diluted, the value of the American dollar is diluted, we're going to raise prices. We're going to keep up with inflation. We have a pricing strategy. Now, the big business may be saying, well, how price sensitive are our customers? But not that much. Why? Because maybe for that big business, there's only 2 or 3 other big businesses offering exactly the same thing. And so really, is there a choice? And can they find a discount option? Maybe a little bit. But big business is generally not afraid to raise prices. And you know what? They don't have to deal with anybody face to face. They just send you the email or the text message that says, oh, by the way, on August 1st, prices are going up and, blah, blah, blah. And they just roll on. Okay, but small business approaches this very differently. We suffer over this. And what do most small business owners do? They say, well, prices on everything are going up. I don't want to price my, market share away from my business. What can I do? I'll keep prices the same. And by that, gain some credit, some, affection from my market, that I'm not price gouging people. I'm not trying to just raise prices for any old reason. I'm really trying to do what's right by my customer. Well, how do you do that? Because all of your suppliers are likely raising prices. The price of electricity is going to go up. The price of internet access maybe is going to go up. The price of supplies or shipping, things that big businesses control, that's going to go up. So what we have is a small business owner affected by inflation in a very different and much more negative way than big business, because now they have to tighten their purse strings even more. And then they think, well, I need to hire somebody to help with all this work, but can I do that? Well, I can't really afford to hire somebody new unless I raise prices. And if I raise prices, I'm going to lose customers. And then I really can't afford somebody. So you know what most small business owners do? And if you're out there as a solopreneur or an entrepreneur with a team, you know exactly where I'm going with this. You don't hire someone else. Your work week went from 50 hours to 60 hours. And then your work week is going to go from 60 hours to 70 hours because you are trying to absorb the cost of a decision you didn't make. And that is so important to be able to articulate and understand. You're not playing on a level playing field. Okay? The field got tilted against you, and you just have to work harder. Okay? The folks that got bailed out in 2008, you guys remember those? TARP 1 and 2? Maybe there was a TARP 3, I don't remember. Trillions of dollars. Bailouts. Who paid for that? You and I did. How do we pay for that? We pay for that because those companies went to Congress and said, we're too big to fail. And if you let us fail, the American economy will fall apart and it will never recover. Interestingly enough, that's been said to Congress about every 10 years for the past 60 years. You ever wonder where Amtrak came from? Go look it up. Find out how we got Amtrak. I won't give you all the details, but the net result was it was a conversation had in Congress. We're too big to fail. If you let this train company fail, the American economy will collapse. You have to bail us out. Okay, this play of too big to fail has been happening about every decade since the 50s, maybe even before. And the reality is that small business and regular people, just like you and me, have been paying for big business to make ridiculously risky investments and bets. And when it doesn't pay off, what happens? We foot the bill over and over and over again. They get huge bonuses. They're making 3 or 4 or 5,000% more than their average employee. That doesn't happen in small business. Okay? We're not talking about business owners, wow, that's the elite. No. We're talking small business owners. That's most businesses. 99.9% of businesses in America is a small business. 10% of those, by the way, are co-owned with a spouse, right? So are those the fat cats on Wall Street that got bailed out? No, they're not. So when inflation happens, as you can see, it hits small business way harder. There's no bailout. There's no help. And then, of course, there's that other catch-22 called self-employment tax. Now, you could say, well, that's important. They need to contribute to, Social Security and Medicare. And I totally agree. Everybody needs to pay their fair share. But if you look at the incentives, it's about $300 billion a year of tax breaks are given to people who are employees. Guess how much is given to people who work out on their own? Who are those solopreneurs? Because we know 27 million of the 33 million small businesses in America are a single person. Just one person who took that big risk and went out there. How do we reward that risk? How do we help them? Well, we crush them with inflation. We punch them in the nose with this whole self-employment catch-22, the extra tax, no benefits, frankly, no rights. Have you ever thought about that? A business owner doesn't have any rights. They don't have any help, like unemployment. Can you say, well, my client just quit this month, so I'm not making any money. Does anybody help me? No. You get nothing. You get told, work harder, do more, get another side hustle. Sounds to me like wage slavery. All right, well, back to the point I was trying to make before. Okay, $300 billion annually are given in tax breaks to employees. And that's great. That's great. How much is given to those solopreneurs? $7 billion. 300 to 7. What drives our economy? Small business. It's more than half of the economy. Where do most people work that have a job? Small business. 2/3 of employees work in a small business. What the heck are we doing? I'll tell you what we're doing. We're getting exactly what we're paying for. See, we're paying for those bailouts, and those companies are paying for people to make laws that benefit, you got it, those big companies. And this is what we have to end. And the first way to end it is to understand it, to start to see that we're not playing on a level playing field. So back to today's topic about meritocracy and the idea of merit. It just makes perfect sense. You merit the thing, you earn it, you get it. But the reality is so many times those systems never really work out. Why? Because it's not a level playing field. So while the idea sounds great, we've got to really look at the implementation. Okay, well, how would we implement something? How would we bring dignity back to work if we could? Like, how could we make this, as I say all the time, and you guys know, a game worth playing? Part of the idea is to start to look at the value that's created at the level of every single job. And for me, that really starts with how we pay people. Yes, by law, we have to pay for people's time. If they are on the clock, we owe them money. That's exactly true, and that's what you should do. The reality, though, is that there is an unintended consequence of this. And I've said this many times before, so forgive me if you've heard it, but it's a good one, and we all need to hear it. If you have two employees, and they're both making, let's say, $10 an hour, okay, and they work a 40-hour work week, one employee does great, goes above and beyond, really puts the heart and soul into it, and gets about twice as much done as the other employee who just does the minimums. No incentive, or rather no initiative, no drive, no creativity, no heart and soul, just does the minimums. Well, what happens on Friday when it's time to get paid? Something truly devastating. The amazing employee gets paid the same as the minimum effort employee who could be called Steve Slacker. Steve Slacker is gaming the system. Well, of course he is. That's what the system rewards. But you could say, but good people, hardworking people would never do that. Well, maybe we're being a little naive there. Because the reality is, if the system rewards a certain behavior, if it favors a behavior over another, people are going to tend to go in that direction. So the good person might quit your company and go find some other place that recognizes their value. Hard to do, but maybe they would do that. More likely is a phenomena called regression to the mean. This means that that person, bit by bit, heartbreaking moment by heartbreaking moment, will no longer believe in their work. They will no longer believe in your company. They will believe in doing the minimum effort required to make the money, just enough to not get fired. That is what a pay-for-time system incentivizes. And the problems that we're facing right now have to be addressed at the system level. If you think about it, systems drive everything. In the modern world, we are so proud of ourselves for being, the scientific method and systemization and, testing something and then modifying it. You can't measure it. You can't manage it if you can't measure it. All those great rational ideas, fantastic. And they have produced incredible wealth. But the system has some things baked into it that we weren't taught to recognize. What were we taught? We were taught a series of contingencies. Get good grades in school so that you can get into a good college. Go to that good college so that you can get a great paying job. Get a great paying job so that you can find an amazing partner and get married. And eventually you'll be able to afford a house and get a mortgage. And you'll get a car. And you'll work for that company for your whole life, and they'll pay for your retirement, your pension, your 401k. It's going to be great. That's what we were told. But the problem with all those promises is A, almost none of them were true. Okay. B, they miss something very important. They're saying that we should give our loyalty to a company whose loyalty is to their shareholders, and whose shareholders are in an investor class that continues to change the laws in our country to benefit who? The investor class. And who foots the bill when they mess up? We do. Now, would it be amazing? Recently, I remember hearing this, and not to be overly political, but recently I was informed that a lot of student debt got forgiven. Wow, that's awesome. It didn't happen to me. I was paying my student loans for, 20 years. Too bad that wasn't retroactive. Yeah, that's a promise. Go to school, getting all this debt, but your job, it'll be so awesome. It'll really just pay it right off in a few years. Not likely. I mean, maybe if you go to some school and you get tenured as a professor there, that they'll pay your student loans off. But most of us are not getting that, right? And then all of a sudden, hey, we'll wipe that out. Interesting. Well, what else happened during COVID? Well, a lot of small businesses were forced to close, and many of them never reopened. Some of them, to keep from closing, took out loans. Should we forgive those loans? Should we say to the economic engine that drives the middle class and brings prosperity to the most people in the history of the world, hey, maybe we should do something for you guys? I haven't seen it yet. And I think ultimately what I'm getting to is that we are operating in a foreign land, so to speak. We've landed on Mars, and the oxygen that we need to breathe isn't here. This is a hostile environment. It no longer fosters growth and innovation, putting your heart into something. It fosters a lot of cynicism and a lot of, frankly, just the feeling of why even try? Okay, now, we can do something about this. What we can do about this is within the four walls, so to speak, of our small business or of our solopreneur enterprise. We can start to create a game worth playing by starting to look at each role differently. What if the highest purpose of business was to facilitate the daily realization of the calling of you and your team in service to the highest calling of your market? What if that was the premise of going to business or going to work? That's a very, very different premise than trading time for money to make somebody else wealthy, who's just going to crack the whip more, either intentionally or systematically, one way or the other, but really it's kind of the same thing. That just looks at us and says, work harder. So how do we get out of this trap? How do we help other people out of the trap? The first thing we have to do is we have to realize that we're in a red ocean. We're on Mars. There's not enough oxygen, and it's going to be tough. The second thing we have to do is retrofit our business, because this system is going to fall apart. It can't not fall apart. It almost fell apart. I think I was told we were a few days away from what was called a zero wave back in 2008. What is a zero wave? A zero wave is when all the banking software starts crashing itself because this bank is no longer liquid. This bank is no longer solvent. This bank is no longer solvent. And you start to have this basically a digital run on the banks. Of course, the problem that we already all know is an idea called fractional reserve lending, which means a bank can lend out $100 even if it only has $9. That's right. Look it up. When you borrow money from a bank, you think, well, it must be coming from somewhere. It's not. It's created. In fact, when that bank got its money to begin with from the Federal Reserve, it was created out of thin air as debt. Now, again, not to be too heavy and not to be like doom and gloom, but you have got to wake up. You are operating in a system that fundamentally wants to keep you as a slave. And that system is going to collapse under its own weight. Just like all of human history, we can see the hubris and pride, all the vices, all the things that we would say, these are the immoralities of humanity. When we operate any system based on those, it will eventually fail. The truth wins at the end. Okay, it really does. People have got to be able to trust each other. People have got to be able to provide real value. People have to communicate in a way that lets everything move forward. When we start disinformation and confusion and all the addictive strategies that are in social media, all of those vices always wind up producing failure. The Roman Empire, you could look at any of a number of examples of seeing systems that overextend and get into a place where they are no longer based on the things that produce growth and health and life and freedom, and they start to be driven by greed and fear. Well, that's happening to us and you all feel it. One of the most important things you can do is to just take a deep breath and recognize that's where you are. Having been in the U.S. military and done a lot of survival training in different places like Tom Brown Jr. School, I hear this phrase used often. The people that survive in an emergency, okay, are by and large the people who accept what's happening the quickest and take action. What do most people do when there's a really serious situation happening around them? They freeze. Some people run in fear, but most people just freeze and they don't comprehend what's happening. I think the generation that my parents belong to would be the generation that I would say, they would just say, this just couldn't happen. No one would ever lie to us like that. I'm sure that the official story is true. I mean, gosh, golly gee. I'm trying to do the imitation of Leave It to Beaver. Golly gee, nobody'd tell a lie like that, Beav. In a way, it's beautiful. I remember when I was in college going to visit a friend in Alabama, Coleman, Alabama, and I had never been there before. And he said, I'm going to make a bet with you. And I'm like, all right, what is it? He said, I'll bet you $5, which was a lot back then, that every car on this street will be, number one, unlocked, and number two, have the keys in the ignition. And I was like, no way that's true. And it was a normal sized neighborhood, so there was probably 20 or 30 cars. I walked up to the first car. I opened the door. It was unlocked. And the keys were in the ignition. And after repeating that about 5 times, I conceded and handed him $5. There was a different time in this country. It doesn't mean there were no problems, but it was really different. It really was. And many of you who are born in the 70s like I was, or maybe even in the 80s, can remember playing. And in summertime, you're out playing as a kid, and you could be gone all day. You could be 5 miles from home. Nobody knew where you were. And you were never worried about anything. And I realized there could be exceptions to that, and there were exceptions to that. But in general, it was a very, very different place. The rate of change that's happening makes a lot of us freeze. It makes a lot of us just lose perspective. I heard this phrase recently that I really like. When in doubt, zoom out. I'm probably going to overuse that phrase for the next couple of months, but it's such a good phrase. When in doubt, zoom out. When you zoom out and look at the trends of what's happening, it's hard to accept it. But not only do we have to accept it, we have to plan for what's coming. And what's coming is there's going to be a lot of change. One way or another, there's going to be a lot of change. How do you prepare as an entrepreneur or a small business? Do you get the best software at the right moment and learn how to use ChatGPT so you don't have to think anymore, so you can come up with this really great thing? No. Those tools can be extremely helpful. Just like the computer was extremely helpful. It was a word processor, then it became, something more, and then became something more. Yeah, those tools can be great. But the reality is we have to face that the change is coming, and we have to create this kind of amphibious sort of approach or strategy. And here's what I think it is, and we'll land it on this. Okay, how can I operate my business in the red ocean, knowing that it's not the blue ocean that it could be or that it should be, but wanting to drive it in that direction? And I really feel like the word is local, and the word is relationships. Real. The more real your business can be, the more it will stand out. The more hackery, angle, cool, trendy, wow, all of that, I really feel like we're just all about sick of it. And hitting the adrenaline button in the marketplace to get a consumer to buy something, hurry up, sale ends by Friday, you're going to miss out, you're going to regret it. All of the fear and greed approach to business is really, I think, collapsing in on itself. And what are people going to go to? People are going to go to real. When's the last time you wrote a handwritten note that you really wrote? It's not printed to look like a handwritten note. You really wrote it to your customers. When's the last time you received one? Probably on your birthday card, right? Or a Christmas card. And then how much of it was handwritten? It was all written by, Hallmark. And then someone said, "Love, Mom," at the bottom. Why? It's just more efficient. Let's just go on Amazon and buy someone a card and send them a gift and have it typewritten, "Love, Eric," or "Happy birthday, Eric." What is happening to us? Well, we can change this. We change this by looking for ways to build relationship. Building relationship is a local environment sort of thing. It means being able to look into people's eyes, even on Zoom or on some kind of online meeting. That's not great, but it's better than nothing. It means taking the time to let people hear your voice and to do something that is truly unique. In the over-commoditized economy we live in, everything's interchangeable. $1 is as good as another dollar, right? Everything's interchangeable. What happened to the reality when someone gave you a gift that you would never sell that gift? It couldn't be replaced. Sure. Let's say it's a pen that your great-great-great-grandfather used. Maybe it was like a quill or some kind of fancy ink pen like that, a fountain pen. I don't know. Okay, so imagine that's passed down in your family, and you now have this pen. We could go buy another pen. No, you couldn't. Not like that pen. You see, that used to be that we imbued meaning and that things in and of themselves had a value, that people in and of themselves had a value. They weren't interchangeable. I hate the phrase HR, human resources. It just sounds like cogs in a wheel. Just pull out one part mechanistically and stick in another part. That worldview is totally bankrupt. It's worse than bankrupt. I won't even get into the whole national debt thing. Okay, it's worse than bankrupt. What we have to do right now is we have to begin taking steps to align our business with our relational priorities. So, a good action step for you guys to take, please visit our website. I'd love to hear from you there. We've got a couple of tools there, one of which is the flagship assessment. It's a great one to help you see what areas are aligned so that they do build relationships, what areas are not. But whether or not you visit us over at Founders Fire, I'd like you to just ask yourself, what can I do in the next week to make sure that my clients or my customers know that I care and know that I appreciate them? Don't send them a gift card. Don't do that. Do something that would be unique. You're like, man, I don't have time to do that. I may have 100 or 1,000 or however many customers. Okay, do it for 10 of them. Choose some people and make a difference. Do something that's relational. All right, guys. I hope this was helpful. Thanks for listening to the Founders Fire podcast. If you like what you're hearing, please take a moment to rate it. It would be awesome. You hit 5 stars. We really appreciate that. And share it with somebody. Until next time, this is Eric Beck. Go strategic. See you guys.